Hi, BookTube. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and last night I finished We Don't Need Roads, making a Back to the Future. So if you are a fan of Back to the Future, this review might be for you, unless you've already read this book. This is by Cassine Gaines, probably a bigger fan than me of this franchise. Back to the Future was probably the first sci-fi I ever got into. I think I got into it before those 4 Batman movies, which I consider superhero and comic book stuff as sci-fi. Um, and this was so good and so informative and so interesting to read about this movie franchise and how it was made. And the guy had trouble getting the people to be interviewed. Some of the actors, like he was told by their agents that he couldn't get it, but he didn't give up, and he got a lot of good interviews and a lot of stories. I mean, once he got the people to talk, the actors to talk to him, he said there were a lot, and they were very open with sharing some of the stories, even the not so great ones. And I did know some things already, like how the first Marty McFly was Eric Stoltz, but then they decided to replace him. And I knew about how Crispin Glover wanted more than Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis were willing to give him to appear in the second movie. But I didn't know all the details, and there was a lot more information that I didn't know, like how certain things like the hoverboards were created. And it was very hilarious to find out that a lot of people, when these movies came out in the 80s, people were disappointed that hoverboards didn't actually work and they didn't exist. Now, but he does talk about how Mattel did put out a hoverboard, but it didn't actually hover. It was kind of, and how what some of the criticisms were about that. It didn't do what it does in the movie, and how it didn't have the shine of the hoverboards in the movie. And it had to be explained to them that those were props. You're not gonna a copy of the prop is not gonna be exactly how it is. It's mass produced. They were mass producing it, so it's not gonna be exactly how it's made in the movie. I mean, they had a lot of money to make it look really cool, and they had all these this special effects team and wires and stuff to make it look like it could hover and move around like a skateboard. So I thought that was funny that they were just like, oh, it doesn't actually hover. So first, of course, the first section talks about the first movie and how it did not get greenlit right away. Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis did not have the best track record on movies. They had some mediocre works that didn't do well at the box office, but it was Romancing the Stone that it was well received, that's kind of got them a second life, got them to, because no one at first cared about Back to the Future, and time travel movies at the time did not do well. But they got it, after Romancing the Stone went really well, despite the fact that him and Kathleen Turner had different opinions. Which is funny because he still worked with her in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but he only worked voice work, so she wasn't physically there. She just did the voice, so maybe of a cartoon character, so maybe that was a little easier. And how, it talks about the challenges of making the first movie, although it sounds like there are more challenges to making the second movie than the first movie. And the third movie was probably the least challenging because it didn't require as much special effects as the first two. And they could actually go on location in the third movie to a famous location for a lot of Western movies. And they start, I think a producer wanted Eric Stoltz to play the part. He thought he was really good because he was a great actor. He is a good actor. But they talked about how he wasn't what Zemeckis was looking for. He didn't have the comedic chops. And they had wanted Michael J. Fox, but he wasn't available. The producer for Family Ties didn't want to give him up, so I think he never showed him the scripts. And then eventually, when they were like, okay, Eric Stoltz is not working, we're desperate, and he finally showed him the scripts. So, like, Michael J. Fox was around the clock because he was doing the show still and the movie. And it wasn't until the third movie that he was able to chill out and relax, because by the third movie, he was no longer working on Family Ties. It was wrapping up as a show. So, which, obviously turned out to be a great idea because, he had the comedic chops, and he took, and it just worked better. And, and it's funny hearing stuff like that and realizing, oh, it could have gone a different way. That'd be interesting. Or it might, if they had gone with Eric Stoltz, if they kept him, the movie might not have done well. Or it might have still done well. It just might have been a completely different movie. Like, they wanted a lighter tone in the first movie. And it's so funny to think about. And there were actors like, in fact, Robert Downey Jr. and Johnny Depp were considered briefly for the role of Marty McFly. And they were just considered. So I did think about, what if one of them would they have it? And they had both done comedy, I think. But it might not be exactly, but although, Robert Downey Jr. is very different from Michael J. Fox as far as physicality. Like, Michael J. Fox is a petite guy. And you got RDJ, although at the time, I don't know how, he was pretty toned, and, he has a deeper voice than Michael J. Fox, but it definitely is interesting. The same thing with Johnny Depp. And maybe he was, and who knows, maybe he was considered too pretty. But, and his comedy that I've seen him do is kind of more, like, although he does do silly, like Benny and June was kind of more silly when he did with the comedy in that one. But he does kind of more of that snarky stuff, or more of that quirky comedy that I don't know if they would have been looking for that. And I don't know how serious, I don't think they seriously, considering those two actors or any of the other actors they were thinking of that seriously. They were just a consideration, and then right away Zemeckis was like, no, that's not what I'm looking for. And that's what happens in Hollywood, I think. And Zemeckis sounds like he's someone that had the vision he wanted. He had a particular vision in mind. And if it wasn't working, it wasn't working, and he wouldn't, But as the Gaines says in the book, it wasn't just Zemeckis' baby, it was also Bob Gale's baby, too. And they talk about, like, how, like I said, they talk about the hoverboards, and how and the time machine itself, the DeLorean itself, and how that was created, and how they had someone have a sketch artist design what it looked like just for visual, so they could put the stuff in the actual DeLorean. They had multiple versions of it, ones that they could, beat up and stuff, and then ones that were just for certain shots. And they talk about, like, how everyone, like Lena Thompson loved doing the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, but it was also challenging, especially with her costume. Her dress was really uncomfortable and was tight fitting, and how, like, she would walk around in a corset on set, and how there was one time where her mom showed up and was not pleased with her walking around in just her corset. And then of course talk about Crispin Glover and how he wasn't, like, the actors liked working with him because he was brilliant, he was a good actor and funny, but he was a bit eccentric, and the crew did not like working with him as much as the actors did. Like, the crew couldn't stand working with him, and he was a bit eccentric, like I said, and he had but he does such a great performance, and he does amazing. And Lena Thompson was very attached to her acting partner, and in fact, to the point where she was a little cold to the guy who replaced him when he ended up not doing the second movie, Jeffrey Weissman. And it was just awkward with him, on there, like, both Michael J. Fox and Thomas F. Wilson, who plays Biff, were like, oh, Crispin's not gonna like this, kind of in a joking way, but also probably serious at the same time. And And I feel bad for him. I felt bad for Jeffrey Wiseman. And then Bob Gale has said, because everyone has, with a lot of those kinds of things, everyone has their different points of view on how things went. A lot of these things, whether they're good or bad moments in the making of the movie. Everyone has a different version of events, which I find really interesting. Like, you don't know what's the true event, what truly happened. And maybe it's a combination of both people's versions of events. But in this particular situation, I think the crew was kind of relieved that Crispin wasn't going to do the second movie. And they told, like Bob Gale said, they told Jeffrey Wiseman not to call Crispin Glover, but he felt bad, he felt guilty, and decided to make the decision, which was probably not a smart decision, because it backfired on him. Got him, and now people he didn't get in as many jobs after that movie because of it. Because he got dragged through the mud. Because Crispin Glover used it against him when they went to court about it. But yeah, so, and the other thing, Gaines talks about how the second movie, because it took a very dark turn, while the first one was very nostalgic, kind of going back to the 50s, like when your parents are kids, and how like the second story took a really dark turn. You have the Biff horrific part where he goes to an alternate, where Marty goes to an alternate, ends up in an alternate reality where Biff has taken power because he stole the sports almanac that Marty found and bought, and he used it to get money, and he ends up married to Lorraine. And Lee Thompson, I'm really sad that she liked working on that because it was different. It was a different kind of challenge, and it was fun. It was kind of fun working on it. And I feel like it's underappreciated because it takes a dark turn, and you're putting up against something that was more relying on nostalgia and a feel-good, story. And this one, like I said, it takes a very dark turn. And I think even though it's not my favorite of the franchise, I have a soft spot for it because it does something unique. It does, or at least unique at the time, where it had like, what if the villain won this time? Like, what would his vision of the perfect world would be? And we see it, and it's kind of like a Las Vegas Strip with all these casinos and, a lot of gang violence, a lot of, the place has gone to shit, and his dad, because of course Crispin Glover did not do the second movie, they wrote his character out that he gets killed, which I think worked. The doc has been committed for being crazy, and I think it was just a really cool, daring idea to go there with it. I mean, now I think people would really love it. I think people would probably appreciate it a lot more now, especially because now today's audience likes darker stories and grittier stories and stories where, like, the villain, you get the villain side of things. You understand the villain, like whether you agree with the villain or not, you understand them better, and maybe even feel sorry for them. In this case, I think it's hard to feel sorry for Biff because he's just a bully. But you see what would happen if he took power, if he was the richest man in town. If he was like a Potter character, Mr. Potter from It's a Wonderful Life, he's that character. Which in It's a Wonderful Life, and that's what happens. Like when George, which is funny, his name is George, and that's the name of Marty's dad. George gets to see what would life be like if he didn't exist, and we see Potter's taken over the town his town and turned into Pottersville, where there's a lot of casinos and gambling. There's lots of a lot of bad stuff happening. Everything is falling apart, and it's kind of the same idea. Like, Marty sees a world where, not where he doesn't exist, but he sees a world where Biff is in power. So I like that. I definitely have appreciation for that. Like I said, it's not my favorite of the franchise. The third movie is still my favorite, but I like that idea. And I hope people like it a lot more. Like, maybe it just needs some time to grow on people. And of course, the book also talked about how the third movie was the easiest because it didn't have as many special effects. And Christopher Lloyd was excited because he got to have a romance in the story, and he had worked with Mary Steenburgen before, which I did not know that they worked together in her first movie. So, and they kind of were, and he said how she thinks, he was kind of infatuated with her, and he thinks she might have been infatuated with him too. But of course, it never went there with them. Which I think was kind of cute to find out. And then another thing I found out about Christopher Lloyd is I did not realize he's afraid of heights. I'm just like, oh, I totally get that, I mean, I don't have like a panic attack or anything when it comes to heights, but I do get wary of heights. But yeah, it was really cool getting this deep dive and learning about this movie franchise stuff, learning about more of the stuff, a couple of things that I did know, and then learning about stuff I didn't know. Another thing I did not know is how, the hoverboards, there was a stunt with the hoverboards that got someone in the hospital. One of the stunt women, which was scary to think about, I mean, we're lucky lucky that she survived. And maybe it would have stopped the movie, and we wouldn't have gotten the movie because, out of respect to her, they might have stopped filming. Although Hollywood sometimes doesn't always have respect. But anyway, yeah, so it's kind of interesting to think about also, just like how it was interesting about the different actors that were considered for Marty, and what would happen if it wasn't Michael J. Fox who played the character. Like, if they stuck with Eric Stoltz or cast someone completely different, like Johnny Depp or Robert Downey Jr., how different would the movie be? And it's still, like, the main cast, except for not always Thomas F. Wilson. He doesn't always like doing it because I think he doesn't, he wants to get away from it, I think he probably does at least still appreciate the movie and his fans, but it's kind of, for an actor, it's a kiss of death if you're only known for one thing, whether it's typecast or just one movie or TV show. It's kind of like, I can do more. I am capable of doing more than that. I want people to appreciate my other work. So I don't look at it as, oh, they don't appreciate their fans, unless they're an actor who's mean about it. Like, I think it's more just, I think we should give them a break and be like, okay, it's understandable that you want to be known for more because you're better than that. I mean, that you are a good enough actor that you could do more. Or you at least want to try to do more than just the one thing. So I don't like to get mad at actors if they're like, oh, I don't like how I'm only known for that project. I want to be known for more. Like, I kind of understand that. So if I ever did get to meet Thomas Wilson, I would like to tell him that I know that I liked him and like when he was on Ghost Whisperer. And so, but it's really cool that, those actors, especially Christopher Lloyd, who's not a young guy, and he's not young, and it's kind of cool that he still does the convention circuit. Like, I found it this year at GalaxyCon, and it's going on in February. They're going to do a virtual meet and greet. Right, and part of me was intrigued and tempted to do it, but it was like, I don't know how I would feel about doing a virtual thing. I would be like very nervous. And anxious about doing that. And plus, it probably would be too late anyway, and I don't know how much it costs. If it's the same amount of money it would take to just go to the convention, then I don't know if it's worth it. But yeah, I was tempted because it would be kind of cool to meet them, and it's like most of them. It's not Crispin Glover, unfortunately, but which is fine because I don't know if, I mean, even though he's a great actor, I don't know if I would be comfortable to meet him. But like, they have Leah Thompson and Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd and Thomas F. Wilson, which I'm really excited that Thomas F. Wilson did it too. But it would be great to talk to them. But I would be very nervous if it was just me talking to them through my computer. But yeah, so it was really fun to read this book and learn about this movie. And then I think what I plan to do at some point is watch the movie trilogy and just see if I notice the things that are brought up. Although I don't remember all the things that he mentioned though. So yeah, it's like after reading this, maybe watching it, like I think that's really, a really interesting thing to do is like if you're reading about one particular movie or show or an actor, then maybe watching afterwards, watching one of their movies or watching the movie the book is about or the TV show afterwards and thinking about it, what you learned from the book, from the book about the actor or the movie or the show, and comparing, like thinking about it. Like in this case, like I said, there's a lot of things he brings up that I'm wondering, I wonder if I noticed these things. But I'm so glad that they did the 3 movies, even if they weren't always, like the third and the second movie weren't well received either. Like, but funnily enough, Leonard Maltin, famous critic on E News, or Entertainment Tonight, he didn't like the second movie, but he liked the third one because he liked westerns. So, thought that was kind of like, the only reason, like, some people might not like certain movies in the franchise or have a preference for one of the 3 is because of certain aspects of it that they might like over others. It's also kind of cool to learn about, like, the inside jokes for the second movie and how the things that kind of came true, like how, like, the doc had, basically plastic surgery to make himself look younger, and now that's a big thing today where a lot of celebrities do that. And a lot of people, if they can afford it, will do that. Regular people that aren't celebrities will do that too. But yeah, so there were a lot of cool things, and I gotta admit, jokingly, I said, okay, where are the power laces and the hoverboards? Where's the flying cars? And the other thing is, one of the other things I learned is that years ago they got rid of the ride at Universal. That was the first time I heard about this franchise. Was getting on the ride, and my dad told me about it after we got on the ride about the movies, and it got very popular in Japan, and the ride still exists in Japan. They didn't get rid of it. They didn't replace it with like Simpsons or something. I mean, granted, I don't know. I'm reading this in 2003, and this 2023, and the book came out in 2015. So I don't know. Maybe things have changed, but it's kind of interesting, especially because they're, that is still, the ride still exists in that version of the park. But yeah, so if you are a fan of this franchise, check this book out if you haven't already. It's really good, very informative. There's lots of stuff that you might not know, and it really dives deep into and it's a person that's a fan, and he even talks about the fan clubs that were created when the movies came out. It's very well organized, not a super long one. And Bob Gale quotes on here, leaves the blurb. It says, a very compelling and enjoyable history of our trilogy. Reading it was like going back in time. And great Scott, there we were, even a few incidents that I've never heard of. So that was cool. So yeah, it was funny that he did. I don't know if there's any other. Let me see. Anyone else? Okay, but so it's So really, that's the only person from the movie franchise that talked about that. May left a quote on the book. I don't know from any other. Like if the actors were doing the virtual, and I decided to do it and talk to them virtually. That's one of the things I probably would consider asking is, have they read the book, like, and what do they think about it. But the other people quoting that have read this are other authors of other books about famous TV show creators and stuff. Like, there's a quote from a guy who did a book on Sesame Street. There's the guy who did a biography on Jim Henson, Quentin Tarantino. Oh wait, no. Oh no, wait. Actually, no. It's a quote from the guy who wrote a book on Pulp Fiction by the movie that Quentin Tarantino made. The guy who wrote Twilight Zone Companion, and the guy who wrote Planet of the Apes Revisited. So so Bob Gale's the only one that is blurbed that was part of the trilogy. Although I'm sure the other people in it that have read it, other people involved in making the trilogy probably read it. At least I'm hoping. But anyway, so those are my thoughts on this We Don't Need Roads. If you like this video, be sure to give them thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification below if you want to be notified about my latest videos. And I will talk to you all later. Alright, bye!